Welcome back to another episode of Harmonious at Lunch, the show that fuels your business success. I'm Brandon Gano, your host and guide through the world of harmonious business growth. Today, we're unlocking powerful strategies with industry experts to help your business thrive. If you're a business owner, entrepreneur, or executive, you are in the right place. Join me and our incredible guests today on the journey to clarity, growth, and success. It is time to revolutionize your approach to business. Let's dive in with another episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Welcome back into some more bite-sized business advice. In today's episode, we're talking about parenting and entrepreneurship and how you could and can and should do both very well at the same time. I have a very special guest with me, and I'm excited to talk about this topic. It's personally something I don't hear enough about, so I'm excited to dive in. Dan Peterson, welcome to the show, and thank you for being here. How are you?
I am wonderful, Brandon. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this is, we were talking about when we first met, what we should center this episode around. This topic came up, and I'm curious. I already said I don't hear about it enough. You hear about this talked a lot in the business circles you're in?
Not really. I think that it's a underserved topic when it comes to podcasts and just discussions in general, whether it's online or in quote unquote real life. That's why I like to talk about it. Besides the fact that I'm an entrepreneur and a parent, it goes hand in hand, but no, it's not something that I feel like a lot of people do a good job of talking about.
Yeah. It'd be kind of funny if you weren't a parent and talking about this topic.
I wouldn't have a leg to stand on, would I?
Right.
What I'm talking about.
Here's how you should parent your kids.
Right.
I won't have. No, but I have kids as well. I have 3 young kids. You have kids. I'm really excited to dive in here. What's your journey of being an entrepreneur and a father at the same time? First of all, how long has it been, and what has that looked like for you?
Well, so if I kind of go back to the beginning of my workforce career, whatever you want to call it, like when I was 14, from that point on, I've kind of had that entrepreneurial bug in me just because my parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, they're all pretty much entrepreneurs. And even when I was younger, 14 through roughly like 20, I pretty much managed the yard portion of a lumberyard building center, at least for the second half of that 14 to 20-year-old age. So that was my first foray into management. And then that led to other management, which led to eventually ownership in a different company. And I had a few offices, a few sales offices scattered from Chicago down to Houston. And then that was right before I started Flip Switch 12 and almost 13 years ago now. So I've had the entrepreneurial bug from the time I was a kid. I mean, I used to go door to door selling like paper clips and rocks and stuff when I was 5 or 6 years old, So I guess going way back, but now my kids are, as of the time we're chatting here, 15, 13, and 6. I have 3 daughters. Heaven help me. But they, I started the company just after my first was born. So they've almost grown up together. The business and my oldest are almost the same age. So I've been doing both for roughly the same amount of time. And I feel like that gives me an interesting, maybe not an interesting perspective, but definitely a perspective on how the two go hand in hand, especially as you add children along the way.
Yeah. I'm curious, which one do you like better, the business or your daughter? I'm kidding. You can't answer that question. Please don't answer that question.
I'll hit mute and answer it. No, I'm kidding.
No, but I had a very similar experience with my oldest. And, for me, it was when you first have a kid, it's a very unique experience. By the time you get to your 3rd kid, that thing's born with bubble wrap. I'm just convinced. Like they bounce off everything, and it is what it is. But the first one, and to have a business at the same time, that closely mirrored my story. What was that journey like for you? Kind of balancing okay, I'm a dad, but I'm also a business owner. I'm employing other people. Like those are 2 very highly stressful journeys, and you're new at both of them.
Yeah. At the time I didn't think anything about it really. It just was life. Right. So I was just doing it, and I have a great wife. We've been fortunate for her to be a stay-at-home mom up until just the last couple of years. I mean, and that was because the only reason really she's working now is because we have older kids that can help watch the youngest one. And she wants to. I mean, she's very fortunate to have a job that is in the actual, pretty close to the actual degree she graduated with years ago. So, which is rare in and of itself. And so she's enjoying that. But, going back to the original point here, I was fortunate to have her be able to support the household while I was running around like a chicken with my head chopped off, trying to start a business and grow it right out of the gate. And here's the interesting thing too. So we were early in what we were doing. I mean, 13 years now of social media, which is predominantly what my company focuses on. I always kind of joke like it's dog years, right? So like 13 years of social media is like 100 years of like regular business and marketing, because it hasn't been out that long. It's a relatively new subject in the world. And we've been doing it 75% as long as it's been a thing. So I think because of that, there was a lot of room for, I'll just call it error or trial or whatever you want to call it. But we didn't have a lot to compare ourselves against other than other agencies, which had been doing traditional media and traditional marketing for, however long, 50 years, whatever. So there was nothing really to look at to compare it with that I knew anyway, especially being new in the industry, new in the business. I hadn't owned an agency before. I owned a direct sales company that did door-to-door direct sales for like big telecom companies and energy companies. So yeah, I don't know. Like I didn't have anything to look at or compare it to. So it wasn't as big of an issue as some might think, just because it was just what I was doing.
I think that's fair. And you don't really understand until you look back on it.
That's it.
Is also another way to see it.
That's exactly right.
As far as though, growing your company and then expanding your family over time, how did you continue to prioritize the family time and pouring into your daughters to make sure that they grow up with a present parent? Because I know I've seen that a number of times. I know I fell into that trap early in my parenting journey, and I've seen others do it and never come out of it. So what were some of the ways you prioritized that harmony between your family and your business?
Well, it's a great question. I didn't in the beginning. I wasn't good at it. I mean, I would argue we're always our own worst critics, right? I would argue I'm still not great at it. I'm just a lot, I guess you could say I'm a lot older now, maybe a little wiser. It's amazing what 13 years of child rearing and business ownership will do to you. It ages you quickly, I guess. So I wasn't good at it when I was in the early days with like my first daughter, and even my oldest two are 22 months apart. So not a lot of time really. And in those first several years of their lives, I wasn't great at it. I worked a lot. I was out and about a lot. I didn't put the time and energy in that I wish I could. At the time, I thought I was. And that's the thing. Like I thought I was good at it or doing okay or whatever. Looking back now, it's like, man, I have some regret about not trying to imprint certain moments of their life on my brain and my psyche so that I could replay it in the future, which, not to get off track, but that's one of the biggest tips now that I give to like new parents. I'm like, man, just take like every little moment, those special moments, like the first birthday, the first steps, all of that kind of stuff. Don't just video it. I'm not against videoing and things like that. People say like, oh, put the camera down. I think it's great to have that to look back on. In fact, for me, that's the only way I'm able to look back at some of this stuff, because I didn't imprint it on my psyche. But I think that it's very important for people to be more present in the moment and just look at it and really try to absorb it and soak it in. And like I said, imprint that upon yourself so that in the future you can recall it better. And I didn't do that with a lot of things in the early days, and I've gotten a lot better at that now. Like I really am mindful of what's going on in my kids' lives now as much as I can to just soak it up, because it's gone, in the blink of an eye. But, as a business owner at the time, just looking back, it's kind of funny we're talking about this because I was thinking about this the other day. Just looking back at it, it was a whirlwind. And I think that that's where a lot of business owners get thrown off, is because it's so much work to start a business and run a business and be involved. And even still 13 years later in this business, it's a whirlwind. It's more of a whirlwind now, because now I've got more going on than I did when we were first starting. More clients, more this, more that. But now I have the age and a little bit of wisdom behind me to know that, hey, work will wait. Nobody ever lays on their deathbed and says, man, I wish I had worked more, or I wish I had gone to more meetings. So I'm very mindful of that. And I think that that's something that younger and newer business owners have to really start, especially with here's the other thing, especially with smartphones now. Now we're not only running a business, now our faces are buried in a phone for how many hours a day. So you can really get sidetracked with two things now, your work and whatever else you want to call it, distractions, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. I mean, it's impossible to disconnect. I think that's an overused term, but really, like my phone is, I'm looking at it right here. I can always see it. It's within arm's distance, 24 hours a day. That's, it's really, really hard to mentally check out of that. I'm curious though, because you said, for your first two daughters, you do have some regrets about not imprinting those moments. Was there a moment in time or an event that you distinctly remember when you made a decision to be more present in those moments? Because now it sounds like you do a pretty good job of that. So what was that transition in your career where you were like, this has to be done. This has to be my priority with them?
I don't know if it was a specific time. Like, I can't think of like a calendar date per se, but I can kind of give you an idea based on, and ironically, I run a digital agency. Ironically, it was when I realized, by looking back at social media memories, like Facebook brings up memories, and my wife will tell you, I have a very hard time to this day looking at those memories of things that we were recording all those years ago and posting or whatever. It makes me sad. And I don't deal with like aging and death and things like that very well. It's just not, some people are like, oh, whatever, it's just part of life. And I don't, that's not how I am. I'm very, I get kind of sad about the speed of which life progresses and how all of a sudden my kids are, they were 1 and now they're 13 or now they're 15. And my youngest is 6. Like, it feels like she was born yesterday. But I've been much more mindful in that 6 years than I was in the first 6 years of my other two, because of what we just talked about, the age and wisdom that comes with that. But it wasn't a specific time on the calendar or anything like that. It was more of a thought process that came, again, ironically, as a social media manager, it came from social media. It came because those moments pop up and it's like, oh man, I don't even hardly remember that. Like, thanks Facebook, because my brain forgot, but it's there eternal online. So it's hard though. And I say it like, it's not even a good thing. I almost don't enjoy the memories. Like, I don't enjoy seeing them. I mean, on memories on Facebook, on that part of the app. For me, it's more painful than it is joyful. My wife looks back and she's like, oh, look at this, it's so cute. And she shows me and I'm like, man, I can't even watch it, because to me, it just brings up a time when I wasn't as mentally present as I wish I had been. So to me, it's a torturous moment. But for my wife, it's a joyous moment. And I hope someday that I can look back at it and be like, and give myself a little grace and give myself some forgiveness there, because, we're all doing the best we can at the time. But man, looking back, it's like, what was I doing? Just could have done a lot better. So, but woulda, coulda, shoulda. You can't change the past. You can only do what you can moving forward. So, yeah,
unfortunately, that's the takeaway. That's the message. It is what it is. At least you learn from it. And I have to say, I mean, I appreciate your vulnerability. I did not think we were going to go this direction with this interview. But I know for sure it definitely helped somebody, because I had a similar story, and I heard somebody's message that really prompted that shift in my own life and parenting. That was like, business is can come and go, and it's easy. Money, same thing.
Right.
Kids and the relationships you build with them are forever. And you really only get those 15 to 18 years to make them want to continue that relationship. Just because you have kids doesn't mean you're going to know them forever. They may choose to walk away if you don't treat them the right way. So it's really, really important to be there, be present, and be the mother or the father that they need from you. So I appreciate it, Dan. Thank you.
Well, yeah, you're welcome. And I hope that people listening can actually take away kind of, especially if you're younger, like if you're in your 20s or 30s and you're starting a family, don't make the mistakes that I made of starting a business. If you're an entrepreneur and you're starting a business, or even if you're just an executive of some kind, or really, I guess any employee technically, you could easily just dive into your work and forget about some of the more important things in life. And I just hope that people can listen to that and take something away from it. But I definitely want to say as well that it's important for people to give themselves that level of grace to a certain degree. You know what I mean? Like, don't beat yourself up. Even if you went 20 years of hardly paying attention, I mean, you did what you did, and you probably did it from a point of love for your family. I think most people do it because they're trying to provide. And I would argue, I'll probably get in trouble for this in this day and age, but I'd argue that men have an extra layer of feeling that they need to provide, just because it's kind of a genetic DNA kind of hunt, kill, get the deer, get the food, so I feel like there's an extra layer on us, and we're not as vocal about it as men. That's been pretty much proven. We don't do the mental wellness checks that other people might do. So I think it's important to give ourselves grace and to understand that life is, it's short, but we're doing the best we can, and you can't beat yourself up. You can only get back on the horse and try again. So.
Amen. I agree. I love it. Now, before I let you go, you mentioned you run a social media agency, and I definitely want to touch on that a little bit. So if someone hears this interview, they want to work with someone who gets it, who has his priorities straight in life, and maybe they could learn a thing or two from. Give me the overview of your agency. What do you do, and who do you work with?
Sure. So I started Flip Switch, like I said, it was back in 2012. I started it out of a need for help originally with websites for small businesses. And I come, as I mentioned earlier, I come from that entrepreneurial background. My parents and grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins owned different businesses. So from retail to service industry. And I grew up in that. And I was there every day to see it. And as I got older, I worked in retail, I worked in customer service, managed restaurants, did different things. And I saw the need when I came out of the other side, like, man, nobody's helping the small guy. It's always the big agencies helping the Coca-Colas of the world, but who's helping the mom and pop coffee shop and flower shop and those types of people. So that's why I started the company. And it was, to this day, it's done out of love for those small business owners. And so what we do is we do full service agency work at a fraction of the cost of the big agencies. And like even here in Chicagoland, we're like a third to a probably 10th in some cases of what other agencies are charging. And we're doing more work for that money than they are, than the more expensive agencies. So you're getting a lot better bang for your buck. And we make our money in bulk instead of just off of a small handful of customers. So two sides to the business, not to make it too much of a commercial here, but we either do the social media for you, or we coach you on how to do it. Or if you have an employee or a team or whatever, and the coaching is taking off in the last year and just blowing up. So, but whether you want it done completely for you or you want to get better at doing it internally, that's what we do.
I love it. I appreciate that. And I know if the listeners are anything like me and they feel the same way about social media, go to flipswitchsocialmedia.com and just pay Dan and his team to do it, because social media sucks. And somebody else should do it. You know how I feel.
It's hard. Yeah. We don't even love it. That's all we do. It's impossible to keep up with. It changes every minute. So
yeah.
Thank you for that.
Way too complex. But Dan, I can't thank you enough again for your vulnerability, the rawness, and just being willing to share, because I know for sure it helps somebody out there. because it helped me at one point. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it very much.
Wherever you're watching and listening, thank you for being here too. All of the links, the social media links, the website down below in the show notes. So make sure you go grab that, check out Dan and what he's up to. And thank you for being here again. I want to make sure you subscribe. Come back. We put out 5 episodes a week because we're a little bit cuckoo, but we want to help you build a more harmonious business and life with these quick little episodes. So we'll see you on tomorrow's episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Harmonious at Lunch podcast. Make sure you subscribe on whatever platform you're on, and we want to invite you to join us in the Small Business Success Facebook group, our private group where guests and listeners come together to grow your business. We want impact-driven entrepreneurs who are ready to go to the next level in this group so we can all share ideas, collaborate, and grow our businesses together. Go to whatif.com/group, and we want to invite you to join today. See you on the next episode of Harmonious at Lunch.